All right, we're going to get started. First of all, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. I know there's so much good stuff happening right now, so we appreciate that you're here, and we'll try to honor your time and pack this full of as many tactics as we can. Just to start off, we're going to introduce ourselves if you don't know who we are, so you know where we're coming from. My name is Katie Hink. For the last 4 years, I've been running digital projects and news applications at MinPost, a nonprofit journalism org in Minnesota, and I just recently joined INN as design director. So I've got some experience starting a news apps team from scratch with one person, and then building it to, we ended with like 3 people right now, and grew slowly over time. And your turn.
Yeah. Adam Schweigert, and I work at INN as well. I just hired, actually, Katie, just recently. I'm in charge of our product and also tech group, which has evolved from a team of also 1 to now 3. So also just kind of a similar situation, just growing a small team and figuring out process. Also, INN is itself like a network of like about 100 like nonprofit investigative outlets that are also very, very small. So we do also just like a lot of work in sort of connecting just across organizations, the sort of like 1 or 2 man just kind of teams, and trying to figure out how to actually support them as well too. So that's another focus of ours.
I'm John Keefe. I'm the editor of the WNYC Data News team at WNYC New York Public Radio in New York City. We too started as a news apps or data news team of 1 a few years ago. Have since grown to 5, which is really exciting. And we've been navigating how to actually do that, and especially when you were the sort of sole proprietor at the beginning, and then expanding and trying to share duties, figure out how to foster the creative process and stuff. So we'll talk a lot about that today.
Right, so as we started to talk about the obstacles to doing good work on small teams, we found that 4 bigger categories kind of emerged in our conversation. So we'll be tackling these one at a time today. And for each obstacle, we're going to share a bunch of tactics and tools that have helped us along the way, with the caveat that this is not an exhaustive list. We're learning constantly as we go, as you all are, and your mileage may vary. So after we talk through these categories, there'll be time for questions and conversation, and we want everyone to be able to leave here today with at least 1 or 2 tactics that you can use in your own work, to make it more efficient, fulfilling, and impactful, whatever that means to you. So I'll hand it over to Adam to describe our first obstacle.
Yeah, so our process, there are just many obstacles around, I think, on like a small team, like managing like time, and also like figuring out how to actually structure like a process that's sort of right-sized for like a smaller organization. Often like a rigorous like project management, just kind of like methodology might be too much. So we look for ways to sort of prioritize things and spend like limited like resources and energy. And we have a bunch of tips here that we'll kind of go through.
So one thing that worked really well for us at MinPost is starting with a very small process and then building as we found that we needed more. This was like, we would have a few formal checkpoints. So, okay, loop in the stakeholders, which just means the editors or reporters or whoever is involved in the project from the very beginning. Make sure you're checking in with them enough time ahead of publishing that you can make changes as you need to. Another great way to do this is creating an intake sort of process, like teaching people in your organization how to work with you, and pre-publish checklists so you never forget to do things like browser testing and things like that. We also tried to break down ambitious projects and iterate. So, as you're getting started, people might come to you and say, like, I want to build this amazing application that's like fully immersive, like election portal that will solve all the problems in the entire world. And no small team can do everything. So a good way is to just really narrow down to what the most essential part of the project is and start by solving that problem first. And then there's nothing that says you have to stop working on the project once it's published. You can build and have it grow over time. Also, for a small team, you might not have a formal project manager, so you have to be your own project manager. This means setting up the process and also communicating how long you think a project's going to take, so that's really clear to the people who are working with you in your organization. And just know your estimates will be wrong, but they'll get better over time, and you'll get closer and closer as you learn things and do them over and over again.
Another way to maybe try to grapple with this, I'll just say that I'm really horrible at this time planning part. But somebody on our team, Noah Veltman, actually has been proposing the idea of thinking of in half-day work, right? How many half days will this take? That's a lot easier sometimes to cut. It's a nice chunk. You can sort of imagine a half day, 4 hours, 5 hours, whatever that might be for you. And so if you can spell that out, either as a team or individual, like person half days, that might be a place to start, because I know I just have a hard time getting around that. Something we talked about is planning for maintaining the news application or even the visualization. Sometimes you'll make a visualization and it has, like we did this year, how many 90-degree days have we had through this day? Well, in a week that needs to be updated if you still want to use it, and then a week after that or the next day it needs to be updated. So who's going to be updating that, and how will that be updated? And that should be thought about in the process, because otherwise you can really get swamped later. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to do that. And then do crazy, I won't say it, but do crazy stuff sometimes. We did something kind of crazy recently, just about 2 weeks ago now. The 4 of us had to, well, actually the entire 5 team had to finish a project in a week. It's something that we're going to be launching in 2 Mondays. Had to be done fast. There's no way we were going to make that deadline. We ended up renting an Airbnb in the Catskills for really cheap, and we just left. We rented a car and we went there and we lived together for a week, and we got to know each other really well, and find out each other's dietary constraints. That was fun. And we cooked for each other, and we kicked butt on this project, and it was really fun. So if you have the means to do that, or even know somebody who has a cabin up north or something like that, give it a shot. It was really, really rewarding.
Yeah, and that's been similar for us. Like this week, we actually did the same thing. Brought the entire team up here just a few days early to rented like a condo. Have also been sort of spending time like together and cooking, finding out each other's like dietary restrictions and everything, and it's been really good, right? Because as a team, especially since we're actually like a team of 4 that's actually in sort of 4 different cities. We're all actually spread out. We don't see each other except at mostly conferences. So we do also like check in like regularly and do sort of daily Scrum stand-ups in the morning, and do also like just like a weekly like recap meeting to look at obstacles everyone is actually facing, like make sure everyone is okay still. Just since like we don't see each other, we may not know exactly what's always just kind of going on. So using things like chat also help, and just recognizing that people work differently, that we want to sort of create like an environment where people can take a break or walk around or have like a flexible schedule to enable them to do their sort of best work. So it's kind of checking in, but then allowing for a lot of sort of flexibility. We also try to avoid unnecessary meetings, but really all meetings except Scrum, because if you have your entire team in a meeting, you can quickly burn through, like a half day of work in an hour. Trying to be really just kind of thoughtful about like whether there are some things that we can instead like handle over chat, email, just a quick, just kind of hangout or something else.
Can I just jump in and say that there were no meetings in the Catskills, and it was amazing. That may be why we got everything done so quickly, because we had no meetings.
And then, I mean, like, prioritization is also just huge, right? So there's a lot of things. We have these multi-month, very large, like, projects. We do just, like, a lot of work on sort of platform and CMS kinds of things. And, you know, to not get sucked into that so much that you have this process and are focused on actually delivering big things, when maybe there's, if you, like, spend an hour to do just a small thing that would have a big impact, to sometimes just kind of step back and be just like thoughtful about the like long-term like roadmap, like, but also just like quick wins, like things you can do in an hour or in just like a half day of just like focused work.
So the next obstacle we identified is all about buy-in and getting people in your organization on board with the projects that you're doing. And so when you're first starting to get a team rolling, or if you're a small team, convincing people that you deserve resources can be a challenge. So these are a few of the tips we have in dealing with that kind of frustration.
So one thing that I started doing early on was attend the daily news meeting. And it's tricky sometimes because it's early in the morning and it's not always relevant, often not, to what I'm working on at the moment. But by attending the daily news meeting, I know what's going on in the newsroom, I know what people are talking about, and I can jump in and see a possible data project or visualization that I might be able to put together for that day or the next day. And so it's just a good way to be present, to have people know that you're engaged, and to know when you can jump in. I just found it to be incredibly important, especially if you're not sitting anywhere near the newsroom, but even if you are.
Yeah, I'll jump in and just say, at MinPost, we recently moved into the newsroom just so we could be physically close to the editorial decisions that were happening, and it helped an enormous amount.
Yep, and we intentionally put ourselves right in the newsroom as well.
Yeah, I would say also just about INN, like I love to also visit like member like organizations, like because spending a couple days in like a newsroom, you learn so much about how people work too, you know, and can kind of see the ideas there.
And this is, can I not get rewrite? That's basically, we have found that when stakeholders and people are getting engaged with our work, it's really around the words. A lot of our visualizations and interactives have very carefully chosen words to go with them. And a lot of people in our organization are really good at wordsmithing. And we found actually that by making it easy for them to edit the copy, whether it's in a Google spreadsheet or something that we can quickly pull from either automatically or manually, that kind of a thing makes it really easy to get rid of those sort of barriers. If somebody wants to rewrite a headline or rework the intros, things like that, we make it really easy, and then we can focus on the code stuff for the actual interactive. So that's been really helpful. And then I would say track your traffic. You probably already track, or somebody does, the page views and things that are going on your site. We found it really, really useful for our own internal purposes, and also for telling other people in the organization, what kind of impact we're having, to actually put Chartbeat and Google Analytics codes onto our own interactives. So even if they're embedded into a page on the WNYC site, the page gets its own hit, but we actually know that it gets a hit too, because we're tracking it separately. Also, we share our embeds, and if you do that, what you do, you also get information about when it's being embedded in somewhere really big, like Yahoo News or the Daily News or something like that. And then you can see, it will tell you where things are being embedded if you haven't caught it yourself. So we found that to be really important. How you do that, we were talking a little bit earlier, what metrics you use. I will just say that if your stuff starts getting lots and lots of traffic, no matter whether or not your organization puts a premium on page views, people will pay attention more. So get credit where it's due. Sorry, that one's me too. One more. What's this going to sound like? So I'm in radio, but you can apply this to newspapers or the web. You know, what, in addition to, so that we're making interactives and visualizations and data projects, okay? But is this just going to be something that's like a sidebar that sits silently next to some copy that somebody wrote about this story? Or are we, in our case, going to be on the air talking about this? Are we going to be guiding people through it? Are we saying, here's what we found in this visualization. Here, you can see this too. For being a radio station, we make a lot of maps and we talk about them on the air. And we actually have a little test now that if we're not going to be talking about the visualization on the air, maybe it's not something we should be doing, right? Because it takes a lot of effort, and you want stuff that's going to be have the most impact. So I think that would be true too. Is the data person appearing in the story in the paper, or is that discussion going to be there, or on the website? So it's something to think about. Not just is it going, how's it going to live on the web, but how is it going to be a part of the overall coverage?
Yeah, and I would say that the best ideas are often like not ours, right? So I think listening to other like newsroom, just kind of like members, and if someone comes to you like with an idea, to not shut them down, to be focused on actually saying like yes, or at least just crafting an idea, just because really like good ideas come from all over the place, right? And just listening to folks and trying to just like meet them like where they are and encourage them if they do like have like a good idea, or even I think sometimes a crazy idea, to sort of get them I guess not afraid with actually working like with us again, and more also like willing to take feedback from us, and to also help them to understand how we work and how the sort of process goes. And that also like I think goes into just not making people feel dumb. It's easy if you're in like tech to sort of talk over people and use like a lot of like jargon and very like specialized like language, and kind of be like, well, you don't understand, I can do this like faster, I'm just gonna do it. And instead focusing on really showing them like how things work, really be, I think, committed to ongoing education. Our like role is as much, I think, teaching as it is actually doing. So to sort of get buy-in by really involving like people in the process, I think is very, very important. And just being nice, because our team at least is very like Midwestern, so we just apologize a lot. And but it's really a core, I think, value to be nice and to go out of our way to just help people and really meet them just kind of where they are. So.
And along those lines, we need to all be working to break down the silos in the places where we work.
It happens once a year. The other place to go is Hacks Hackers. If Hacks Hacker meetups, really get involved. If they're in your town, then they probably are. And if they're not, start one. It's really easy to do and get other people involved, not just from the journalism community, but actually other civic sort of coding folks who want to be involved. And it's a great way to make connections and learn and have somebody to IM when you're like stuck on your code.
One thing I really like to do is Skillshare in the newsroom. So this could look like pair programming if you have somebody who's a developer or has some sort of tech skill that you want to learn. But I also think that it works with non-developers. The more we can kind of walk people through the work we do so that they don't need to know how to do it exactly, but at least they'll know the language that we're speaking and how to ask questions, and they'll then understand what happens when you're working on a project. I think that just makes for a better work environment for everybody. And if there aren't people in your organization that you could pair program with, if you are the lone developer, look for people at other organizations nationally. Do some online pairing if possible. And part of this is also, this is another place where we can break down silos, is speak up about what you're learning. Don't assume that people know what you're working on or what you're excited about. You really want to kind of share your vision and excitement and energy with the other people in your organization, and that can help you feel more supported. And you really want to talk to the people in this room. These people are your community. So share your frustrations with each other and your successes and what you're trying to learn, tackle problems together.
Yeah. And there's also things like, like listservs that have been just around a long time, like NICAR has a fantastic one. There's a lot of also like Google groups and other things out there for various, like affinity groups. There's a product management one. There's amazing. All of these like folks. So I guess never feel like you're actually the only person like doing something, right? There's odds are there are lots and lots of like people at similar size like organizations in the same boat, and you can find them online, and like never be afraid of like reaching out and just like connecting, even if someone seems like they're too like famous and like scary. Just send them an email. Again, most I think people are really nice.
I was just think,
and it's willing to help, I think, right?
so willing to help. And I don't know how many of you know, but I used to be the news director at WNYC, and I decided to change my focus to become a data news person, and I didn't know I would stay at WNYC. There are easily 24 people at this conference, and maybe more, and several in this room. I'm looking at you, Brian Boyer, and there's others who helped make that happen, and I could not have done this. Started any of this without their support, openness, and just willing to like answer random tweets and DMs about when I got stuck. So those people are here and they're really interested in helping.
Yeah, and I'm just going to pile on and build on that one too, and say that especially building a news apps just kind of team from like scratch like today. Often, like, we've been working a lot on our sort of internal team, like, mission and vision and kind of documentation and process and everything, and I think we've probably stolen 99% of that from, like, people like Brian Boyer, Scott Klein, John, the other folks that have already been out there and been sort of doing this for now, just at least, several years, right? About 5 years, maybe, about 6 years. So there's a lot of existing stuff out there, and borrow from what people have already done. If you see a team that seems like they're doing like fantastic work, talk to them. See if you can go and like visit them and just like spend some time understanding how they work, and then borrow and steal as much as possible. Obviously, like credit them, but take all of their good ideas, because we want to move things like forward. So if we can avoid like reinventing that wheel and like just add on that next 1%, that's the best way to, I think, move the industry forward. And also for organizations like INN, I think NICAR is kind of the just like granddaddy of this, but how we can do our job better, let us know. And that's certainly true for INN, but also for any of these other national organizations. I think they want feedback on how to sort of better connect people.
So, do y'all have any questions?
Now's your chance.
Now's your chance. And if you do have questions, please come up to this microphone in the middle, because it's being recorded.
Hi, you guys. Thanks for a great presentation. My question is about bringing people for special projects into Scrum, and how much you rely on modeling Scrum behavior and how much you teach it. Thanks.
Well, I can say that we lightly do Scrum behavior, so we're doing it probably not right. The sort of dev IT, the web IT team that is downstairs that's really responsible for the players, and lots of the more infrastructure stuff do this really, really well, so we steal from them a little bit. Basically, on our small team, we just make a point to get up actually stand. We're not allowed to sit, because then the meeting goes on too long. Brian's raising his thumb.
Yeah.
And you stand up, and we just talk about what we're doing that day, what our blockers are, and what we might need to coordinate with each other. And we're all sitting there. I mean, we really are all in the same sort of cubicle space. We just stand up, face each other, say good morning. It's at a set time every morning, and we try to keep it to 15 minutes, and standing up actually helps. So we really do that, and that's what we do when we're doing a daily stuff. For special projects, we actually invite people from the newsroom or from Radiolab or from wherever to come and join us for those. And in fact, and sometimes they make pitches at the end of it, and sometimes they're involved in it because they're involved in the process. But we always actually make them come at the beginning, and we don't talk to them until the very end of it. So they actually end up hearing intentionally all of the sort of little busy work that we have to do for the day. And so they get a sense of what our team is like and what the rhythm is like. And then we open it up to them as well, and they're the next one in the circle, and they say, we talk to them. And if they're away, we'll do it over Google Hangout.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to just have people watch a few times or just kind of see what happens if you do your daily stand-ups, and then you can bring them in and they'll have a better idea of like what's for Scrum and what's outside of that, what's a conversation that happens afterward. So it's just kind of like sort of a gradual welcoming into the process.
Yeah.
Hi. So, sort of on that note, for small teams and big newsrooms, what is your process, I guess, for letting reporters and stuff pitch? Do they have to go through editors? We're sort of in that gray zone where we have so many reporters and we really want to hear from them. So, but there's maybe too many.
Yeah. I'll just jump in on that too. There's kind of two things that happen. One is you have the reporter who actually gets the data stuff and understands it, and you know who those people are. They're maybe it's the court reporter or somebody who's like can use databases but isn't really a full-on maybe car reporter or certainly not a coder. And those folks will come over every once in a while and be like, hey, do you know how to do this with this database, or where would you go for that? And in those cases, the reporters tend to come to us directly because they're not asking us to create something or start a new project or something like that. When there is something along the lines of a new project or something to accompany a story or something that will maybe be the anchor for a story, we basically require that the editors be the ones that bring it to us, sometimes with the reporters, and then we actually discuss that. They pitch it to us together. And that's really important because we've run into some situations where we're going down the road and didn't really realize that we haven't connected with the editor, and the editor was a little bit surprised about what was happening, and that's no fun. You don't want to surprise anybody. And you also want to make sure that this is actually the priority for that reporter. Sometimes that might be their little project, and which is great, but if you're putting resources into something that actually is not going to be a big part of the coverage, that's problematic. So I do recommend the reporter route for the projects.
Yeah, we try to get everybody who would be involved, what you would call stakeholders, editors, reporters, together in the same room or in the same conversation as soon as possible. Like if somebody brings us an idea, awesome. If we're interested in pursuing it or we have time to, we need to make sure that everybody's looped in. Like you said, nobody likes to be surprised that you're off somewhere working on something and the reporter really needs to be focused on something else right now. And yeah.
I'll say that said, brainstorming with reporters that and like just having lunch with them and stuff about ideas that could become projects that they could then pitch to their editor and then go is really fun. I do that a lot and have come up with some really fun ideas because reporters have hunches. And I might be able to think of a way to pursue that. But then we go pitch the editor, make sure that they want it, and go that way.
I just wanted to know a little bit more about what you guys have come to learn would be the best process for the storyboarding part of, if you get to your special projects or your medium, large size stuff, we've had some stumbling blocks of where we have a small team and not so good at the pacing of the storyboarding, lots of cooks in the kitchen, bringing stakeholders in and out, and then you can't really separate the form and function of this so that maybe some really good creative ideas that really change the functionality come in late in the game, and how you guys have gotten ahead of that maybe are little tips in that world.
Yeah, I think having set points where you sort of get feedback, so you sort of deliver rough thing, the sort of the rough idea and functionality, and don't focus as much on polish. So you're kind of not in like a black box, and you're sort of like, okay, so we're gonna build this thing, and also do sort of design as part of that, and then you're just like, ta-da, right? It's I mean, like, a lot better to get feedback on the initial functionality and kind of do these incremental, just kind of just have like the set like milestones where you'll sort of, I don't know, get together and do an update and see like where it's at, and then leave some things loose, I think, for the end, you know. So if there are sort of like visual elements or polish that you want to maybe not like nail down as much, like you can often build a lot of the functionality, I guess, and get all that functional stuff done, and then add sort of a layer of polish to it.
And yeah.
Yeah, to absolutely like define a process, right, and kind of have that as sort of how you actually structure a project. I think is really important.
Yeah, this is a really hard problem because people will always want to jump in once they see a product or at the wrong time. They'll have an idea late in the game, and we want to be flexible, but part of it too is like over time teaching people what the boundaries are. Like, this is the point in the process where you get to give this type of feedback. We'll go through wireframing, we'll make the card stacks of the features, we'll do all that, but after this date, we're moving forward because we want to actually launch something. And yeah, we want to build something. And it doesn't mean that we can't incorporate that feedback after publish, but we might have to say, great idea, wish we had thought of that a few weeks ago. We're still going to publish on Tuesday, but we'll definitely put this into the next iteration cycle.
My question's on scoping projects. If you kind of have these two ideas where one is maybe you build something, it's quick, you get it out there, it kind of owns the internet for a day, and then it goes away, versus maybe something that's longer, it takes more people to build, maybe it has some sort of updatable features, and it gets a lot more traffic, but over a much longer time, but perhaps then there's more challenges to that. How do you kind of decide between those two? And when you're having that conversation from the start, because I'm at an organization where everybody wants to build trackers, right? Like these big, massive updatable projects, and we're trying to more encourage them to get things out quicker, faster. Our developers would like to have more things out there. Just what's that process, I suppose, and what are your thoughts on those two times?
That also is a tough nut to crack. I, for a long time, and still sort of feel like those quick one-offs are a great way to show people what's possible, especially in a skeptical newsroom or a newsroom who doesn't know what you're up to. So I like those quick maps and those quick things that you could just sort of put together. It's very easy then to have all of those successes and then have everybody want all of those all the time, and then you can't really work on the longer projects, or you get sort of scattered with that. So I think it's a very typical pattern for a team to start out like that and then move into not doing sort of the daily stuff. I would say that we find it really rewarding to do some of the daily stuff where we can, and this kind of gets back to the last question too, we can be like, okay, y'all, if you want us to do this by tomorrow, you gotta leave us alone, and we're just gonna run at it. And everybody's like, okay, fine. And suddenly we can work really, really well because nobody's looking over our shoulders for the moment. So we still like the daily stuff. I think the one thing I would say is if you are making those tracker kinds of things, try to make them try to make the content of the tracker somebody else's issue. A way to do that is maybe having them putting it into a Google spreadsheet that you download and then feed into the tracker, either automatically or manually over time. So we try to offload some of the actual content of the trackers, and then it also allows us to sort of use the tracker software again.
And I think also if you just mostly build that big stuff that lasts a long time, to sort of schedule time into those like sprints where you have, I mean, like a half day or like a day where you do something crazy, because I think it's a good break, right? So kind of doing something to do that sort of quick turn, if you can actually schedule it, which in like a news environment is sometimes harder. I'm very, very like lucky that we're sort of separated from that a little bit, but you know, to just like set aside time, like on Friday, we're gonna block that out and build something in a day to.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because for us, we always were trying to balance the big projects that would take a long, long time, and then wanting to be putting something out there almost every week. We wanted something small or fun and just like be present. And for team morale, that was hugely important, because when we got sucked into the like 4-week, 2-month sorts of projects, and that was all we were doing, it felt like we were grinding our gears, and it was so hard to like keep momentum and energy around the projects. So like when we have those big projects, we do build in time to do the smaller stuff every week. Just even if it's like we're going to publish this simple sortable table, okay, great. We're at least putting something out there that's not the beast of a project over here.
Hi, I work at Slate. I make interactives at Slate, and what I've been doing for the last year especially is try to make templates, like so I don't have to like rebuild a quiz from the ground up every time we do a quiz or something, or even a map. And I think the next step beyond that, now that we have like a few templates for things that we commonly do, is to give like the editors the keys to those, right, to allow them to build these things themselves. So I'm wondering, what approaches have you taken to connect the editors to the products so that you yourself don't have to be like involved in the creation of them?
Yeah.
And thus freeing up time for like other stuff.
I think building a simple, the interface like for them is often great. Like we built like a responsive tables thing. There are so many of those out there, but I built ours, and it like uses a lot of existing stuff. But just kind of building a simple like web app front end for that, where you just kind of put in like a Google like spreadsheet like URL, and it like gives you all the stuff you like need, and you can just embed that. There's a quiz tool I think Fox built. There's a few others, but kind of taking that extra time to like, rather than like having like something I have to install and run on my just like machine. As an editor, like you're not going to do that probably. So if you have a simple like a web like front end for it that you just host, and like they can just kind of drop some stuff in and then like spit out some code they can drop onto the site. I think that effort is actually very worthwhile. I think it saves you a lot of hassle, so it's a great way to make it much more kind of accessible to other folks, and also save yourself that time of having to sort of spit out all those other quizzes, right?
Yeah, we try to use Google Spreadsheets as like a back-end CMS for a lot of projects, because making the input interface easy for editors or reporters to use was sort of the first big thing we did to make them actually want to use these tools, because they understood how to do it. And yeah, I think having sort of the front end piece where you can just generate the code, plop it into the CMS, or like however your site is structured, it makes it really easy for people to kind of take that agency into their own hands.
I would just say one thing is that there's an issue for us that we template it to a point, but for example, every map is different. It's so different. It's like artisanal map every single time, which I love, right? It's journalism. You don't want to do anything that anybody's been done before. You don't want to write a story like out of Mad Libs. So you don't want to make a map just to like fit the template, right? So we try to see where that point is, take care of all of the sort of chrome around it and all the other things. Maybe we have a color palette that we can choose from, like try to get some of that stuff down. And then we really try to focus on the sort of craft of the map. And then it's a unique thing, even though we started from maybe 60% in or something like that. And then we actually have, in a couple of cases, worked with our IT department. We have a Django-based CMS, not the team, but the station does. And they've been really interested in working on taking our code, which is pretty straightforward, and then turning it into Django models and things that I don't quite really understand, but then they make it so it's available to anybody on the CMS. So our code has actually ended up in the CMS. Sometimes it's just, what's the Google spreadsheet that feeds this? Or sometimes it's like, here, pick these drop downs. So there's actually for the really repetitive stuff, quizzes, for example, you can talk to your IT folks and see if they want to put it in there. Because as was pointed out to me, the more that it's available to folks on all the computers, the more they get used, and that's great.
Thank you.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Hey, Brian.
I'm stealing the mic for 1 second to make a plug. We're going to be talking about Agile at length tomorrow. So if this Agile Scrum stuff is interesting to you, we'll have a session on it. It'll be an hour tomorrow sometime. I was going to ask you guys about the T-word templates, and that just got answered. And I was going to ask you about balancing work, the balance between daily and project stuff, but that just got answered. So how about deadlines? specifically launching stuff in coordination or not in coordination with our other mediums?
Yeah.
What do you guys do?
So I'm going to jump in on this because this is something that happened on our team, and it's really something to think about as your team grows. So I was, when we were one person and when we were 3 people, I was sort of the main person that the rest of the station would deal with, right? And really interesting, right when you're about to launch, like in the last week, you're about to launch a really big thing that you're really excited about, but you have to put those last little bits on it. That's when publicity, legal, marketing, community affairs, everybody's suddenly like, wait, we want in on this too. Not in a bad way, but like, hey. And sometimes we're trying to get them to do that. And they're finally like, whoa, cicadas? Holy cow, this is amazing. And suddenly I was like unable to work on it at all because I was in meeting after meeting saying, okay, explain to me this cicada thing again. And so what happened was my boss, Jim Schachter, had a great idea, which was to hire a person whose job was not only to keep our team in line, so Keo Stark is our producer on this, senior producer. She not only keeps our team going, but she also is that interface with everybody else, and she's immersed. She's a part of our 5-person team, but she's the one who's making sure that marketing and PR and all the folks have what they need, and then craft those things. So it's, as we're looking for coders and producers and data people, that person turns out to be really, really valuable. And it's allowed the rest of the team to actually complete the project in that last week when everybody wants a part of what we're doing and needs information. I mean, in a very valid way, needs information about what we're doing.
Yeah, I think, it's again, not having surprises, like keeping people involved in your project throughout the way, but I think it's also setting multiple deadlines. So if you're working with multiple departments or mediums, if you've got print or TV or radio or other things to consider, have the marketing deadline set. And that might be a little bit different than your published deadline. And that's okay. Make sure people know when they need to be getting you stuff or working on crafting language or other stuff, and you don't necessarily have to always tell people exactly when you're going to publish so that you can actually get things before you publish.
Yeah, but I would add also for like small, just like newsrooms that don't have a PR like department or kind of don't have these other media, still do that. Still have like press releases and blog posts and tweets and stuff. Make sure to promote your stuff and really, think through that and do some outreach. Like don't skimp on that. Like just because like a media like organization, like don't assume that you shouldn't be also like doing outreach to other media like organizations to just like promote some cool stuff like that you're building because that's really, really important.
And I would just say that if you're a small team, like a 3-person team, which we were for a long time, which was basically producer, editor, me, a coder, and a designer. Generally, in the flow of those projects, the designer actually ends up sort of lighter weight work toward the end, and the coder and the producer are doing a lot more at the end. So the designer might be freed up. It may be a role for your designer to be the person to be like, okay, they know the project inside and out. Maybe they're the people who step in at the end, toward the end of the project, to do that kind of stuff. So if resources are an issue.
I'm really glad that you guys mentioned maintenance at the beginning, because that's one thing that feels like it kind of just nibbles and nibbles and nibbles, and eventually you have a lot less time for creative new projects. So I was curious, do you guys ever talk about or have like sunset plans for projects? How do you put things to bed? Do you take them offline, or do you just put a stamp, last updated October 2012 or something? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, for sure. I think start a project without a plan for how it's the full 360 planning for that project. Know what you're going to do. Is this something that's going to come offline at some point, or is it something that you're going to archive and put a date on? I think all of those are valid approaches. I think it just kind of depends on the project, but definitely going into a project, never take on a new project without having some kind of plan for the end of it, I guess.
Well, I think for projects that maybe have live data in some way, but it might not be relevant 2 years in the future, we tend to think about it as like we would sort of bake out a flat version of it eventually. Like we'd keep it up and running for a certain amount of time, but plan from the beginning, okay, we're going to maintain this for a year and a half or something and have the live data being pulled from whether it's the legislature, whatever source it was coming from. But eventually say, okay, it's time to shuffle this off to the retirement home. It's still available, you know, people can still find it, but it's very clearly not being updated anymore. And, you know, we indicate that on the page. People can still use it and look at it and see what we did, but it's not live.
I have been poorly disciplined at this, which is to say not very at all. And so there's a lot of stuff on our site that is several years old. Most of it has dates, which is useful, so you know when the data come in. And so we're trying to be more mindful about that, but sometimes it's just like, oh, this got to get out the door, and then you go. I will say that one major project, so the really big ones, where we're asking people, in this case, to submit their sleep habits every day, track their sleep. And we actually had an iPhone app that also was useful for doing this and was feeding data in. So it was almost an afterthought, and so fortunately it wasn't. We had to decide how to build a kill switch for the app and the site. So what we did is we were able to, there's basically a piece of JavaScript that if we change it, it goes into dormant mode. And that was actually a new concept for us, because instead of, like, part of it is like, okay, how do you sunset it? Well, we actually designed and tested what it will look like when it's dormant. And then we could turn that on with just a little bit of code. So instead of trying to go in and rebuild it or unbuild it. So that's something to consider. I mean, to actually put in a kill switch and say, okay, now turn off. And you know, it has notices about that this has been completed. You can see the archives here, whatever. But we actually did that with intention once.
And we're just about at time, so one more quick question.
All right. Last thing to end with, and this is very open-ended, but I want to talk about teams. I bounce around to a lot of newsrooms, and I've worked with a lot of different combinations of designers, developers, reporters, editors, graphics, video, photos, all of that. What do you think about as, especially for a small team, what is the minimum shippable news apps team? If you had 2 people, 3 people, what are the skills that you most need represented on that team?
It depends. It's a tough question. I can say, like, for us, we've been really sort of focused on sort of the core team, which is me, Ryan, and Katie. So sort of 3 of us, like, one is a dev mostly, one is like a designer mostly, and then myself, where sort of I do all the management of that team. And also, like, do a lot of other stuff. And I would say that everyone on our team, we've been trying to sort of hire in a way where, you know, we have sort of a superpower, like, plus other stuff, right? So so I think Katie's like a designer, but she's really, like, thoughtful about process and about, like, sort of product management and all that stuff as well too. And, like, Ryan, I think, is mostly a programmer, but also, you know, good with like a lot of other stuff too. I think thinking about, like, process and management and sort of information, just like visualizing stuff has also, like, skills there. So I think you know, looking to build a team that's cross like functional, but not so much like you're hiring like a team of sort of completely generalists, but people who are sort of focused, but you know, can do a lot of actually different things. I think that's in general just kind of good advice. Just kind of like good advice, like whether you're 2 people or 3 people or 5 people or 10 people. As you sort of get past 10, I think you can start to specialize a little more maybe, but in general, like hiring like people who, you know, can do a lot of different stuff and make stuff and just work together, yeah.
And I think one person can be a news apps team.
Yeah.
You just play to your strengths then, and then you keep learning all the time. And eventually you might be able to build that team and add resources, but just because you don't have a specific dev person or designer, you can still make things for the web, and you can still publish things for the web and have fun while doing it.
And I would just say our experience was the designer, developer, and editor, producer So editor, all journalists, all experience with some level of journalism or media. The editor-producer really thinking about the audience, about the impact, how this works with the story, and then the developer and the designer. That was our sort of Scrappy go-to team for a long time when we had 3 people, and that worked really, really well. I think it helped that I had had a history with the station, so I understood a lot of how to get buy-in, and I understood the audience, and I understood the journalism, so that helped a lot. But I couldn't have done it, what we did, without a great developer and a great designer. I think that's a combination.
So we realize we can't begin to cover everything in a session like this, but we want to keep the conversation going. So we put together a hack pad, which is just a collaborative doc that everybody can add to. It's got notes from this session, and it's also just a space where the people in this room can connect and share ideas or any tips that you guys have from doing this sort of work. The link is up on the screen. It's bit.ly/ONA14impact. So check it out and contribute. And if you have more questions for us, we'll be around after the session and the rest of the weekend. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.